Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Twin Peaks: The Return Part 9. Full spoilers for the episode. Oh, thank you, it's back. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, so there was an empty void last week, and it was quite depressing. But we're back. We're back for Part 9. Got my notes ready. We're going to go through this. I will be highly impressed if we somehow equal or top the length of the last discussion. I don't think we will.
It's unlikely.
I don't think we will, but you never know. To be fair, I do want to point out, I mean, I suppose this is technically a tangent in and of itself, but I do want to point out that despite the lengths of all the videos we've done on these Twin Peaks episodes, there's been very little to no tangenting in any of them. They've been very on point.
Yeah, and obviously this depending on how much of our other videos you watch, you'll know that's maybe somewhat rare. We tangent relatively often.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say we tangent an absurd amount by any means, it's just...
We don't tangent like loads, but after 8 episodes, we're bound to have tangented a bit.
Yeah, and I feel like we've not in this, so it's all been very to the point. I think maybe that's because we've come in with such a large amount of notice that everything's very... Not scripted, but there's a rundown of things to go through.
Yeah.
Whereas...
And just it takes us so long to get through it all anyway that we haven't got time to go off on other nonsense.
Yeah, well, with that said, let's delay no further and get into part 9. So we opened this first little chunk's a little bit awkward because it cut between like 2 scenes constantly. Like there was 2 kind of main things, but I'll go through them in order because I kind of noted them down as I was going. So we had Doppel Cooper, who's up and around, and he still seems to be Doppel Cooper. Bob, of course, is not with him anymore, but he still seems to be acting as Doppel Cooper has been. And he basically knows that he's in the right place because there's a red bandana. Hanging
again.
off a fence. Yeah, red once again. The idea that red's even... And again, here it's like the other characters obviously left this for him. The fact that it's red, in terms of the context of the show, is purely coincidental. But of course, from outside of the show, from a decision-making process, red was chosen very specifically. We're off to a good start. I'm completely butchering the Link's language.
Just to give some context within the show as well, he might still, he's from the lodge. Red to him might have significance because presumably he said that will be the signal. Put out a red, put out something red.
I think just thematically, it's this nice idea that both Cooper and Doppel Cooper are both being guided by red in some capacity. So that's nice. But it's literally just one shot, I think, of him walking up and grabbing this bandana.
He picks it up and then that's it. Put away.
And then it cuts to the plane. We got the FBI team. We got Gordon and Tammy and Albert and Diane's even there. A couple of them are sleeping. Diane and Albert are sleeping. And Tammy just brings Gordon some coffee, and he gets a phone call. And the phone call I've been expecting, in fact, from Colonel Davis from the CIA about these Major Briggs fingerprints, and that's basically it. I mean, I think the only maybe notable point of this scene is that there's a little joke about him mishearing him, but it's oh wait, South Dakota? We're in South Dakota. That's weird. We're so close by. Like So that's that. Go back to the farm. We actually see Chantel, who we saw at the end of the second part. So that's someone we know who's been working with. And then in just walks Tim Roth, who I had no idea was in this show.
Yeah, me either.
He didn't even have an entrance. He just kind of walked in from the left, and he was there. And he's got this really thick sort of Southern American accent he's got going. But I mean, he's nice to see. His name's Hutch. I picked that up. So they're working. Basically, this part of this scene again is it's very by the numbers. He's going through like, oh, who has this place? Oh, farmers on here. They're out back. Get out some new phones. It's all very instructional. Not a lot to really chew on in this snippet. But there's that. So it goes back to the plane. So like I say, it's cutting back and forth. I think actually that's true for a lot of this episode. Is that it feels a lot more like an old school Twin Peaks episode, just in terms of the pacing of the scenes.
Yeah, there's probably only the Dougie scene that really just sticks on that.
Yeah, where it feels like a long... I'd argue maybe there's one more, but yeah, like there's only a couple of scenes that sort of stick with the same pacing that we've had recently. Also a lot more music in this one, and not just a lot of music, but also a variety of music. There was also like the upbeat music that you got for like the more comical scenes.
Yeah, which I thought was really interesting because it made me notice the moments of silence much more. Obviously, especially when there was a lot of moments of silence without even dialogue.
Yeah, we'll get to those as we go. So we go back to the plane, and it was basically just Gordon saying to Diane, like, I know you want to go home, but we need to make a pit stop in South Dakota. It's related to Cooper, Blue Rose, Major Briggs, all the rest of it. And we get like this little joke about Albert wakes up for a second. He's like, yeah, I know, F you, Albert. He goes back to sleep. It was pretty funny. Worth mentioning that two other things happen here. Diane gets she doesn't get a text. She checks her phone, and it's blocked. And this could just be setting this up for later when she checks it again. But it does make me ponder: is she expecting something on the phone?
Yeah, she could be. But then again, checking your phone is not unusual.
It's not. It's not. I'm just thinking, but why is Lynch specifically showing it? Maybe I'm reading into it too much, but and also that we also find out, or at least the characters find out in this scene, that Doppel Cooper has escaped from the prison.
Or as they put it, Cooper flew the coop.
As Gordon puts it, Cooper flew the coop, which is a great line. So yeah, again, short little scene, straight to the point. Go back to the farm again. This is the last part of this sort of like alternating set of scenes. And Doppel Cooper phones the guy in Vegas that we've seen before, the guy who's been hiring the hitmen. So it confirms a big thing here. It confirms that Doppel Cooper is actually the one who's ultimately behind these assassins that are going after Dougie.
Yes.
He wants him dead. So that kind of connects those together. That's pretty cool. And obviously you can tell that he's scared of Doppel Cooper. He's immediately terrified. He's like, oh, the job better be done next time I phone.
Yeah, it's really just solidified to me that Dougie was his plan to put Cooper there instead of him.
Yeah.
So that when the switch happened, that there was someone to go instead of him.
Yeah, absolutely. He most likely, but the one that made him. And now that he's out, he's trying to get rid of him because
because he's like, right, he'll go to here when the switch happens, and then I could just kill him and problem solved.
Yeah, I mean, he perhaps didn't know exactly where he was going to pop up. He was probably having him watched or whatever.
Yeah, he knew where he'd go to wherever Dougie was, but
yeah.
No,
that makes a lot of sense. So it sets up that he's very aware, or at least partially. I mean, how much does he know that Cooper's out of it and doesn't realise who he is yet? How much of that information does he have? I'm not sure, but he does seem to know that he's there. He wants him dead because he knows that one of them has to die, and that's pretty cool. So he orders Hutch and Chantel to kill the Warden Murphy, from the prison, and then mentions that he's got a job for them in Vegas, which presumably it says double hitter, I think is the phrase he uses, which presumably means Dougie Cooper Dougie. So, and possibly Ike the Spike if it's a double hitter.
Essentially, I was thinking, is the Warden one of those?
No, because he says go after the Warden, and then he's got a double hitter in Vegas.
Okay.
So I'm thinking the second one is Ike the Spike, just to go along with the idea from before where Ike the Spike went after the previous assassin.
Yeah.
Like the job was Cooper and the previous assassin, so I feel like that's probably who he means by that. But yeah, so then we go to the first of several police stations, and I say several because just the way I form my notes, I always put like a heading just by the location for each scene, just so I know where we are. And I realised that I'd written down police station like 8 times, and there's 3 different police stations in this episode.
You have to specify which one.
Yeah, there's the police station in Vegas, there's the police station in South Dakota, and there's the police station in Twin Peaks. So there's a lot of police stations in this one. But so Dougie, or I shouldn't say Dougie, Cooper and Janie E are at the police station, and they're waiting, and Bushnell, Cooper's boss, or Dougie's boss, is in seeing the detectives. And something I noticed in the credits for this one actually is these 3 detectives are all brothers. They'll have the same last name.
I can see it now that you've said it, though.
Yeah, I'll get the same last name, and they'll stand there. And the key things I sort of noted out here, obviously there's a couple of key details about Dougie's past that are very interesting, but before I mention that, I just wanted to say that Bushnell seems to be kind of picking up that something weird's going on with Cooper / Dougie, because he's like, wait, his car blew up and now someone tried to have him assassinated, and it's like he's offering the floor for them to like offer some information back. He's like, I'm concerned about him. It's almost got like a father figure type of thing going here, and they don't offer anything. They just kind of give him like a stock. Oh, if anything comes up, we'll look into it, kind of thing. And Bushnell he sort of like almost forms a fist like he's getting angry, and then he like calms down and leaves, and he goes out to talk to Cooper and Janie E. But
I am convinced at some point he's punching someone. Because we've been told that he was a boxer.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I'm just waiting for it.
I can see it. You can, and I think it's interesting that, you know, as we're waiting for Cooper to sort of become who he was, that Bushnell almost is starting to gravitate towards his former self as well. Even though he's still an old man, he's like, oh, he's getting the fish ready. It's really good. Also, I want to point out that when Bushnell goes out to talk and says goodbye, and he says to Cooper, "Oh, tomorrow you can have the day off, rest of the day off, but tomorrow we're going to start figuring this out. We're going to work together." And he leaves. The detectives all stand in their office and they're watching through the window. They wait until Bushnell's actually left and went through the elevator or whatever until they start talking again. They just stand there waiting.
That's it. That's one of those first moments where there's a lot of silence. We're just, you know, three characters just stood there, doing nothing, just waiting, just in complete silence.
So one of the tidbits that came up when Bushnell was in the scene was that Dougie was in a car crash before he went to work for him, and sometimes the effects pop back up, which maybe explains why people aren't reacting too strongly to the way he's acting right now. Because
maybe this is just a bit more severe than normal, but I think we've questioned this a few times.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think it's ever been as bad as he is right now, because, I mean, the way they keep speaking about it, it sounds like maybe he'd have, like, a bad hour or something like that, whereas this is, like, no, this has been days and days of him acting like a zombie.
Yeah.
So, but the reason why I left that till now is because we got a lot more information after Bushnell leaves and they start talking again. So he had a car crash before he went to work there. They also mentioned that there's no records of Dougie before 1997. Which maybe tells us that that's when he was created. Now they speculate, as witness protection. Maybe his identity was erased by the government, or maybe he is a criminal on the run or something like that. But they theorize witness protection. That's the one they offer up, and they're going to look into it. But 1997, interesting. That's what, 7 years since Cooper went to the lodge and Doppel Cooper came out.
Give or take.
Give or take. I know the show started in 1989. I don't know if it was still in 1989 when it ended, but
yeah, that's it. There's also he's been working there for 12 years.
Yeah. So, and if this is taking place in 2015, which I think it is, that puts it back to 2003.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means anything, but just. So,
no, just that's only 6 years after the 97. So.
Yeah.
You know, it's quite a short time frame for a lot of these things to have been happening.
Yeah, it's the right amount of time though for him to meet a wife and have the kid though, because the kid's about what would you say, 8, 9, something like that.
Yeah, I'd say about that.
So there's enough time for all that, because that'd be after he started the job. So
yeah,
plenty of time for all that. So the detective, they talk about questioning him again. He's like, they kind of realise there's no point because of the way he acts and then the way Janie E is as well. They say, oh, he's like a dog, but she has all the bark, I believe was the phrase they used. But he gets an idea. He goes out and he swaps his coffee cup. He comes out and says, oh, there's another fresh cup of coffee for you. And he takes a cup. I want to point out, cup of coffee was red.
Yeah, I got that as well.
The path to answers is in red. So obviously this is a big deal. They bring the cup back and they've got the fingerprints. They put it in the evidence bag. They're going to get it examined. And I'm like, all right, now Cooper's fingerprints are going to be on record here.
Is there going to be that's the first thing? Is there going to be an alert in the same way that there was for Briggs?
Yeah.
And they're going to go, hang on, Cooper over there
in Vegas right now when all this is going on here. This is funny. This is weird.
Yeah,
he's not the Flash. So how's he showing up in Vegas? And I feel like between the key getting sent back to the Great Northern, between his fingerprints, between him being on camera, not last episode, but when he was when he was attacked and the police cameras and the news reporters were out and all that. Between all this, there's a lot of breadcrumbs that are going to potentially lead people to him, which is very interesting. So that's another big one, obviously, is the police getting his fingerprints. But yeah, so Red Cup. So wait on, where's my notes? Red Rock. So then some upbeat music comes in. There's this other cop comes in the room with news of Ike the Spike. That they realise that the fingerprints they got from the gun were him. They've located him. Comedy music's playing. It's also worth mentioning that that cop's one of the brothers. Their laugh is that weird laugh he has. They bring it up again because they're going a little bit of a tangent about the broken tail light, and he had to pay $200+ to get it fixed. And he thinks this is hilarious. He's cracking himself up. But so the cop comes in, talking about Ike the Spike. He's like, oh, let's go and get him. And even the timing of this scene was kind of weird. It's it had that kind of. You remember in, I think it was episode 3 or 4, when in Twin Peaks the cop came in and did the stance. and waited for like 5 seconds. He didn't do that exactly, but there was this kind of like offbeat kind of...
Just a pause.
Yeah, it's like he would pause like his stance at various points for the timing. It was kind of offbeat. It was,
there was a lot of that this episode, just waiting just longer than you expect for something.
Yeah. I mean, Lynch often has a kind of a weird timing for his dialogue where he'll let the pauses be a bit longer than most directors would. It's kind of his thing. But no, so he tells about Eight Spike. They're going to go and deal with Eight Spike. And also, I noticed here that they all leave in this really weird, formulaic way. They all walk out the same door in a line, and it's like a train of people going out the room. It's almost like if it was a musical, this was like a choreographed part of it.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
I think it's just like they're just so in sync. They're all one unit.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah, it could be that simple. Yeah,
like everything they've done, they seem to be doing it all together. Like there's always the three of them, which is strange in itself for police. Typically, they work in pairs.
But when you have 3 brothers all in the same police department, you pair them up or triple them up.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just strange. I think it's just showing now they're all just this one unit.
So. But we don't cut away. It's actually interesting to mention this is the only Cooper scene of the episode, which I thought I kept expecting to come back to him later on.
Yeah.
But we go back out, and Janie E's just kind of sitting there. I mean, there is quiet long shot of them just sitting, and then the camera kind of goes into Cooper as his eyes caught something, and then we eventually get to the reverse shot, and we see what he's looking at. He's looking at the American flag in the corner of the room, and a little bit of music starts playing, the patriotic stuff. And he is entranced, and I was like, is this maybe like, again, because obviously working at the FBI, the exact, the flag will be there as well, like it's exactly the sort of place where it'll, and I'm just wondering, even just going beyond that, the sense of duty, because he is like sort of a sworn part of the...
Yeah, he's an agent of the government.
Yeah, like I feel like he's remembering his duty, and then obviously the scene continues. The door next to it opens, and a woman walks out who works at the police station. She walks past, and she's wearing red shoes, and he is fixated on the red shoes. He's following the red shoes.
My one disappointment in this scene is that Janie E didn't catch him just following the shoes.
Do you know? I thought that was going to happen. I thought it was going to look like he was staring at her ass or something, and she was going to.
Yeah, he was just following her legs, and I was just expecting her to just give him a smack or something.
Yeah, but he follows the red shoes, which obviously we talk a lot about red leading to things, and the fact that he's recognising the red leading them to things, maybe, because I don't think this woman's red shoes are actually important. I think it's just he's starting to pay attention.
Yeah, he's just seeing red and going to it.
But of course, as she leaves the scene, he notices the outlets, the wall sockets, and you hear a little bit of the hum. And it's like he's recognising it. It's like he's aware that he came from there. Or if he's not aware he came from there, that he's aware that something... It's important.
Definitely. He's noticed something to do with it. Because there's no other reason for him to fixate on it.
Yeah. So it is almost like there is like small pieces of this starting to come together for him. Where it's not... Like, up until now, everything he's recognised has been part of his old life. Case files... You're lying, when you recognise things, agent, all those sort of keywords. The flag as well, I think, ties into that. But then noticing the red and then noticing the outlets, it's like, no, now he's noticing things that happen because of Twin Peaks, because of his journey here.
Yeah, he's learning rather than remembering.
Yeah, good way of putting it. So that was that scene. On to page 2. So, oh yeah, there's a small scene. It's the cops are on their way to see Spike, but before they get there, there's a small tidbit scene where it's calling back to the joke about the tail light, where they're actually looking at the guy's car, and the big guy who keeps laughing all the time starts laughing again from the distance, and that's all it is. It's just a little.
Cracked me up though.
It's a little punchline to the previous joke they set up.
Yeah.
But for some reason they think this is funny, but hey. So we go to Spike in the motel, and the cops are coming for him, and it sort of cuts between the cops and him, and he calls JT, who I'm assuming is the guy who hired him, because the message he basically gives him is that the job failed. He has like specific phrasing for it, like code words.
He says no cigar, taking medical leave.
Oh, we know he lost a chunk of his hand, so yeah, he actually is taking medical leave. That's not even code. That's just
Yeah, and obviously no, close but no cigar. So
yeah.
It's not really code. This is
maybe code's not the right word, but he's not saying over the phone, "Oh, the assassination attempt failed."
Yeah, exactly.
It's code, and he's disguising it so the police, if should they listen to the call, are not going to know exactly what he means.
There's nothing to incriminate him.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
But anyway, so cops coming. Upbeat music still playing as the cops coming in. The upbeat sort of comedy music is still going. Although that said, some dark synth kind of creeps in as we actually get to Spike when they sort of confront him. There's some dark synth kind of comes into it as a backing track. I want to point out that Spike, both in this scene, because we've seen him in the same location in the last episode we've seen him in, where he got the call for the job. I just want to point out that he was sitting in front of a mirror on both scenes.
Yeah, almost everything in that shot, until he leaves the room.
Yeah.
Everything we see in that shot is looking through the mirror. At first, it's just him sitting in the chair, and we're just looking at his face. But he gets up and moves around, and we still just stay on the mirror.
And I think, given this show deals a lot with like alternate personalities and reflections of people and doppelgangers, I feel like that's quite an important thematic little thing there. I don't necessarily think it's saying that he's in any ways a doppelganger or anything like that.
No. Just it's. I think it's just the idea of showing that maybe he has two sides to him. Like he has a public persona, and then he has, the
Spike.
what he actually does. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great little moment, actually. Again, when the three brothers enter, they all enter kind of in this weird unison way. And I want to point out, they crack a joke about the palm, the whole palm.
Yeah, it's like, we've still got it and stuff like
that. Yeah, which sets them off laughing again. So that's the at least for now. I don't know, we might see Spike again, but for now that is the end of the Odyssey of Ike the Spike.
Just thought about something else about the mirror. Whenever we saw Bob, it was often through mirrors.
Oh yeah.
And it's the idea that maybe the reflections kind of reveal the truth.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Certainly, whenever Bob, well, I mean, obviously we saw Bob a lot without mirrors, but yeah, whenever it was revealed that Bob was inside someone, it was always in a mirror. It was always how it was revealed.
A reflection, and that's it. It's like this idea that the reflection distorts and you see the truth of what's going on, rather than just what your eyes see first.
Yeah, and arguably here, the idea is that there's nothing supernatural about this guy because what we're seeing in the mirror is exactly what he's doing anyway. Right,
it's just showing you, no, he's just pretty evil.
This is who he is, yeah. There's no deception here. Yeah, I can see that. So, if we go to Twin Peaks Police Station for a very comical scene between Andy and Lucy. All I've written down is Andy, Lucy, the chair, beige or red. That is the extent of my notes for this scene. So basically what's happening here is that Lucy's on the computer at our reception desk, and she's basically flipping. When you're on, like, I don't know, pick a website, Amazon or whatever, and you're looking in this case it's a chair, but usually it happens with t-shirts as well. You've got a little colour selector and it'll switch the colours to show you the different design that you can buy. And she's just flipping between the two options, which are sort of red pattern or a beige pattern. And she gets up out of her seat, and again, this is very good comic timing with this one, because it's a very long and drawn out, but it's like, she gets up out of her seat, she walks over to Andy's desk, who we see his desk is sort of like in a room behind her. And she's like, Andy, I really love the beige chair. And she walks back over to her chair. She sits down, and a good 5 seconds passes.
Yeah.
Good bit of time passes. Then Andy gets up, walks over to her. Now, Lucy, I really love the red chair. And Andy's delivery is fantastic. I love the way he delivers his. It's the way he kind of looks round backwards and sort of has his chin up.
I just love that they got up and walked to each other to say this instead of just turning around at the desk.
Oh yeah, it's like a whole parade. It's like, it's not just that they want to know, they want that chair, because obviously basically what this is they're arguing over which colour chair to buy for their house. It's that they have to make a show. It's like a little ceremony every time one of them has to make their point.
Yeah.
So then he sits down, and time passes. He gets back up again. He walks back over to her, says, "I'm sorry, Pumpkin. We can get the beige chair." And he snuggles into her, and he walks back. And she has this little smirk. At first, I'm like, "Oh, is she being devious? She's got her way." But then she orders the red chair anyway, and it's almost like, oh, she thinks it was sweet that he gave in, and he's like, oh, get the chair you want. So she's getting the red one to please him. It's actually kind of a sweet scene in the end.
Andy's playing her.
Yeah, Andy's playing her. I feel like Andy is about the entire sandwich short of a full loaf of bread to be that devious.
Potentially. I just love the idea that's just the impression he puts across. If we saw him in a mirror, he'd have an evil smirk.
If we saw him in a mirror, he'd be wearing a tweed jacket and he'd have glasses on. He'd be really smart.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. But no, it's a really, really sweet thing. Now, obviously, again, red's coming into it, red or beige. Like, he picks the red one. Now, I don't think there's any importance to that necessarily. It's just a case of thematically they went with red because it's Twin Peaks and red leads to answers. Also, of course, it's not the first red chair in this episode, or it's not the last red chair in this episode, rather. It is the first one, but it actually thematically sets up another chair we're going to see later on, which is red and does have answers in it, which is a neat little thing. So, yeah, it was a fun little scene. There's not a lot to analyse.
It was a strange little, it was a quirky Twin Peaks scene. It was, what you kind of get in the original show. What we've not had a lot of in this show.
We've not had a lot of it in this show, which is kind of funny because coming after the last episode, which was obviously this big, operatic, thematic, really special artistic episode, coming back to this, it feels almost too normal.
Yeah.
And then adding in the fact that we're having a few more of these little quirky scenes that are a lot more like the old show.
I think that's kind of the point, though. It's kind of showing that even in this world where all that crazy stuff happens, like that we saw in the last episode, it's still life. There's all these little quirky little bits that still happen every day.
It's almost like Lucy and Andy are this is just the regular human beings. This is all this stuff's going on, but here's what represents humanity. God forbid we're all that stupid, but but they're completely innocent and oblivious to it all. They don't know what's going on, and it's not so much that they're saying that humanity is stupid and they don't know about this stuff. It's just that they represent humanity in the sense that they are completely oblivious to what's happening.
And they can have a happy life.
Yeah, and because of that, their big disputes are over which colour a chair to buy, which is light going as decisions go.
Exactly.
So then we actually have what felt like a really random scene, and it's still pretty random. It makes a little bit more sense once I realised who it was in the scene, but I didn't get that right away. I had to remember who the name was. Because they mentioned the name and I was like, oh, who's the name? And it wasn't until I was like, oh, okay, that's who it is. So we have this scene. It cuts to a house we've not seen before, and we see a character in blue pajamas, and it's actually kind of creepy because he runs for. It's kind of like they've obviously picked a very specific house so they could have this effect where there's a lot of running from one door to the next, but from our angle we only see him running past briefly between two hallways or something like that, where you just see him go from point A to point B, but then he's behind another wall. So because of the layout of this house, there's a few of that, and then eventually you hear him run, and then he hits something, and we find out he hits a wall. He's hit the wall so hard he appears to be dead. And one of the things that's fell off the wall is a picture of the Great Northern, and it's shattered.
Yes.
Which thematically, I mean, let's read into that, the fact that trouble's coming to Twin Peaks because the picture of the Great Northern has been shattered.
That shot of the waterfall is kind of maybe one of the first images you think of when it comes to Twin Peaks. It's
one of the most common establishing shots in the original show.
Exactly. So immediately that kind of sets up the whole the town as a whole. It represents that.
I mean, it could specifically just mean the Great Northern as well. I wouldn't discount that, but probably the whole town. It might go to the Great Northern first, but then by extension, the whole town's going to feel the effect of it.
So things are going to shatter because that's it, isn't it? It shatters and it falls.
But of course, this is actually related to the Great Northern because it's Ben's son. It's Audrey's brother. I mean, if you told me before this started we were going to see Audrey's brother before we see Audrey, I'd am like, nah, you're crazy. You're crazy. No, we've seen every member of the Horn family except Audrey at this point, including a new member.
Yeah, we've had a new member.
We've still not had Audrey. Lynch, he's a devious one. But yeah, so Jonathan Horn appears to be dead. I mean, they could say that he's still alive. It's not conclusive.
It wasn't awful looking. There was blood, and he was lying still. But if they told me he was unconscious, I'd believe it.
Yeah, you could buy it. So yeah. Then we go to the Briggs house. This was a very fascinating scene. So, this is one of these things that Twin Peaks does, where it follows up from something they brought up 4 episodes ago, 5 episodes ago, however long it's been. So Bobby brings Hawk and Truman over to his mother's house, and comes in and says, "Oh yeah, we're here to question you about Agent Cooper. When he came to see Major Briggs the day he left. We're here to talk about that." And she immediately just stops him. It's like, say no more. And she basically reveals that Briggs told her they would come. He knew back then. One day, and it's not even just some cops. It was no, Bobby, with Hawk and Truman. Although, as she points out, she wasn't aware that it'd be this Truman, which is a nice little touch. But these three specifically would come and ask about Cooper, and all he said about it, he didn't say any more. All he said was, "And when they come, give them this." And there's a lot, and she kind of pauses from her story. And she's like, "Oh, do you want some coffee?" And it's like, well, "No, is that what he said? Give them coffee? No, woman, get to the point." You're waiting. And I want to point out there's original music playing throughout this scene, some good synth stuff, which is kind of ominous at first, but gets kind of hopeful as it goes on. There's some hopeful tones in there as it gets to kind of the point, and it makes sense given what's happening on screen as well. So she's got a red chair. She's like, "Here it is, follow me over here." She's got a red chair.
Yeah, she actually says, "This is the chair."
Yeah. It's almost like she's answering the previous scene with Andy and Lucy. No, this is the chair. This is the chair they picked. But she's got a little latch on it, and it opens up a little compartment, and she pulls out this, well, it's like a metal rod.
Yeah.
And as she's getting this out and she's giving it to them, she tells about how he always did this. He always seemed to know things about the future. And we saw that in the original show. He talked about how he knew Bobby would be okay, and she kind of brings that up. Maybe not that specific story, but she says, "Oh, he always knew that Bobby would eventually be okay. He somehow predicted that you were going through a rough patch in your life, but you'd eventually be okay and be in this kind of position." And it gets kind of hopeful because Bobby kind of looks, it hits him. He's kind of heartfelt about it, and he like the music's getting kind of hopeful, and he's getting sort of teary eyed. And
that's it. It's because he's going in his mind. He's probably thinking that his dad never saw him like this when he was alive, but then he's like, but maybe he did, maybe he knew, because he had this exact knowledge that he'd be there with the others as the unit of the police. Yeah,
well, that was the thing. Like, later on in the show, when we had that, because Bobby was always kind of dickish to his dad, but then there was that scene later on where he started to soften with him, and Briggs told him about I had this dream about you in the future, and you'd be okay, and we'd embrace. I like the idea that Bobby now looks back at his dad really fondly and maybe regrets how he was with him and sees him for the person that he was, and it is kind of uplifting. And every time Bobby talks about him now, it does feel like he has this air of respect about him, which he never had when he was a teenager.
Definitely.
So we'll have more on that in a bit, because we do continue because obviously part of me was thinking, this metal rod won't be brought up again for 3 episodes, but we do come back to it in a little bit. But we go to the police station in South Dakota with the detective we've seen before, and Lieutenant Knox from the CIA and whoever. So I want to point out here, Diane is also wearing red shoes. I noticed this during the scene here. She's wearing red shoes, and there's a funny thing where she's told she's not allowed to smoke, and she's like, "It's a goddamn morgue."
Yeah,
they're already dead. Is kind of her point. Now, of course, we have to mention before we get to the other scene with when they actually go see the dead body with Albert and all that. She gets a text on her phone from an unknown caller, although it does very much seem likely that this is Doppel Cooper that's sending her a text. The message reads, "Around the dinner table, the conversation is lively." Which, if I recall correctly, he said that or something similar to it when she's seen him at the prison.
Yeah, and I think did we not see Doppel Cooper texting that, like when he was at the start of the episode when he had his flip phone, because I didn't catch the whole message, but I definitely at the time caught him writing the word lively at the end.
Yeah, it probably was. Like you say, it cut away so quick. I never really got a sense of what he was typing.
Yeah.
Even on the second viewing, I didn't quite catch what he was typing.
I definitely caught lively, because he finishes it off typing it.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, it makes sense that she got it later then, because obviously that it was blocked. It was like now she has signal. That's when it finally went through. So it makes some sense. It's interesting though. I think, was she expecting this text? And if she was expecting this text, is she worried about it because she doesn't like that she's getting text from him? Or is there more to this? She does seem concerned. The music that comes in is very dark and sort of moody when she gets this message, and she does certainly look concerned about this contact. And why is he contacting her? Is it because there's more to their meeting in the past when he was Doppel Cooper that we are currently aware of, or is this just like a fresh taunting of her now?
Is this a threat essentially?
Yeah, is there more that she's not letting on about what happened? Now obviously we theorised a lot of bad things, but is there more to it? Is she complicit in a couple of things that maybe she didn't realise? Because maybe at the time he tricked her into doing some stuff and she now regrets that.
Yeah, before she realised it wasn't really Cooper.
Yeah, and did she do something that led to someone else's death, or led to something bad that she, you know, she's has guilt over. So we go into the morgue with the rest of the characters, with the rest of the FBI, Tammy, Albert, the rest of the crew. And the detective, as they go in, recounts the kind of the story we got in the first episode, first 2 episodes, with Bill Hastings, the dead body with the head. It was Briggs's body, of course, all that stuff. Although one new detail he does bring up as they're going in, he mentions that a few days later, Hastings' secretary was killed in a car explosion.
Yeah, I don't recall that.
No, I think I'm pretty sure that's new information.
Because it mentions the wife. We knew that.
Mentions the wife, and they did imply that they were going to set up the lawyer. So even though we didn't see him be arrested, that was implied that was going to happen. So that didn't come as a surprise. But the secretary going up in a car explosion is interesting because it's not the first time we've seen a car explosion on this show.
Mm.
And obviously Doppel Cooper went after the wife, so it makes me wonder, did they also set these assassins after the secretary?
You have to assume so. Just any loose ends still.
Yeah, it makes sense. Albert cracks one of his jokes because he's recounting so much of this story, this case in detail, that Albert eventually goes, "What happens in season 2?" Which I thought was pretty funny. So,
and Gordon apologised.
And yeah, Gordon's like, "Oh yeah, apologies in advance for Albert." Once again, so yeah, so we go into the morgue. They're looking at the body. Albert seems to be flirting a little bit with Constance. They seem to be impressed with each other, which I thought was interesting. But we learned some very interesting new details about Bill and Ruth, who was the murdered librarian that they thought he killed. Yeah. I'm pretty sure he didn't, but yeah, we found out some really interesting things. They had like this shared hobby. They were publishing a blog about an alternate dimension.
Mm.
Obviously, my ears perked up.
Yes, in this show that means something.
Yeah, I perked up. So yeah, Albert reads the case file and it says, "Oh yeah, there was a final blog entry about 2 weeks ago," and this is what it read: "Today we finally entered what we call the zone, and we met the Major." Now, obviously, there's a lot more in this later. When they go and see Bill a bit later, we're going to have a lot more stuff to chew on here. But so I'm going to leave the speculation here for then, because that's where we get
do it
all
all in
detail.
one go.
Yeah, so we'll do it all when we get to that. But obviously, I'm like, oh man, like, so it's not just random that it's Major Briggs's body. Like, it's related to what they were up to, and they weren't just having an affair. I mean, they seem to be having an affair as well, of course, but they were doing something related. They were killed for a reason. They're not just random victims. They were poking at things that led them to Doppel Cooper and led them to this world full of these characters.
Yeah. So
interesting stuff. I do laugh that when they find all this out, and Gordon takes Albert outside into the hall. He's like, "Let's think out loud," and it's one of these funny jokes because he's speaking so loud. But they basically just reaffirm, for them it was just Cooper, but he's seen him 25 years ago. The body's that age, and now Cooper's around in South Dakota, like he's out and about. Doppel Cooper's out on the loose. And there's no new information here, but it's just they're putting the pieces together, saying, "Oh, this is weird how all these things are lining up." Final point of this scene is that they find out about the ring that's inside they found inside the body, which if you've forgotten, and to be fair you might have, because it was like episode 3 or something like that, that'll be the last heard about this, but inside the body of Briggs there was a ring with an inscription that said, "To Dougie, love," or "From Janie E," whoever it was phrased. So obviously, not only are we getting the fingerprints of Cooper in Las Vegas, now Albert and the rest of the FBI have heard the name Dougie and Janie E.
Yeah, that's it. So if they get the fingerprints come up and they look at the case file, they'll get Cooper's fingerprints and they'll see Dougie's name attached when they get to the case file with Janie E, because they'll both be in the the interviews.
Yeah. So
that's it. It's all there now.
Yeah, all these things that can connect will connect, presumably. Yeah. But that's all great stuff. So there's a lot of notes for that scene. Not as much perhaps as the as later on, but. So then we cut to a small scene with Jerry, who's in the woods, and he's tripping. He's high off his nut. And I want to return to some thoughts you had. The last time we saw him and he thought his car was missing, you had some thoughts about how maybe he's going through what Cooper's also going through, about the car being missing and all that. Mm-hmm. And so in this scene, he basically believes that his foot is not his foot, to the point where he's hearing a voice, and we hear the voice as well, It's like, I am not your foot, and it's like this high pitched kind of voice.
So it was interesting how it was subtitled, much like when we're in the lodge.
Yeah, in fact, it reminded me a lot of The Arm, specifically the Arm in this season with the weird tree looking thing version of him. So I thought that was interesting. It makes me wonder, like, so what is this saying? If we're continuing this idea that he's going through what Cooper's going through, like, is it the idea that he is aware that he's not himself, or that part of him's not there, kind of thing? Like, if we're linking it up to Cooper, like, noticing the outlets and going, oh wait a minute, something's not quite right. Like, I'm starting to realise that I'm not really me.
Yeah, or perhaps Jerry's more having like an out of body experience where he's saying, "I'm not your foot," because he almost thinks he is Cooper. And he's seeing this foot, and he goes, "That's not mine."
All right, so, okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I can see that.
More of a mental link rather than a physical.
Yeah. Again, there's a lot of comedy in this episode. This was a really funny scene at the end because he eventually picks up his foot and it flips him onto his back. So it's a good little bit of physical comedy. I imagine that was a stunt double because Jerry, pretty old to be doing that stunt.
Yeah, I don't blame him because that's gotta hurt your back even as a young man.
Not that I could tell, admittedly, like, because obviously the big beard and camera was far away, but I assume it was a stunt double. So then we go to the Twin Peaks police station, and
here's where things get interesting.
Get really interesting. Now, I just want to mention there's a little joke here about Lucy. She's on a lunch break, but she's still sitting at a reception desk. So when the sheriff and that came in and they say hi, and that's all they do, they're just saying hi. She's like, "I'm not here, sheriff. I'm on my lunch break." And then later on when they're walking back out, she's holding up her hand like, "Nope. Not here."
It's great.
Just Lucy being Lucy. My first notes for this sort of section is just F Chad. And that was just immediately when I seen him. Not even
before he was even a dick.
Yeah. I noted down that he was eating 2 microwave dinners. Like, he had 2 of them out, and plus a bowl of something else. He was flipping between them. He was having a big lunch, is what I'm saying.
Don't blame him. Those microwave meals are they're shitty and tiny, and you need at least 3 of them to have be half full.
Oh no, I agree, but they're pathetic, and that's why you shouldn't even bother with them. It's just the idea that he just buys multiples of them for lunch rather than just get a sandwich or something.
They're convenient though, if you want something hot.
There's other convenient things you could have. I'm just saying, it made him more of a dick. Like, I just looked at him and went, "You're being a dick already."
I don't know. I've sat there with 3 microwave meals in front of me before.
I rest my case. So they come out of the room and they're basically like, "Hey, Chad, no eating lunch in the conference room." He's like, "You guys have donuts and coffee in here all the time. Chad, go." And again, very long out, very funny. Him getting up, trying to balance all of his food in his hand, and Hawk's very reluctant to help him open the door for him. Funny stuff. But yeah, this is where we get to some of the real meat here, because basically they're trying to open this thing. The Sheriff Truman can't figure it out, and Bobby. And I like how this is filmed as well, because Sheriff Truman looks over and we don't see Bobby. Like, he looks off frame, and he says, "Oh, what are you smelling about?" And then the camera pans over and we see him smiling, and Bobby's like, "I know how to open that. My dad brought one home one night." And what I like about this is going back to, like, the idea that Bobby, whenever his dad comes up now, it's all these happy memories, and that he feels warm thinking about it now. He feels warm to all these things, and the idea that his dad had all these things mapped out, and he was trying to help him and all that, like, it gives him happiness. So the idea that he's smiling because he's like, "Oh, I remember this," is
and also the idea that he's probably accepted that his dad genuinely did see this. His dad saw his future.
When he goes outside, when they find out what's inside the thing, he says he did it again. Like, he uses those words. Like, he's basically starting to realise that his dad wasn't just some nut job, but he actually had...
And he realised these memories, where when his dad brought one of these home and showed him how to open it, it wasn't just here's something from work. It was, going, "Hey, you're going to need this one day. I'm going to make sure you've got that knowledge."
I do like how, because he says we need to go back outside and go outside. I like that this fancy device, the way to open it is literally just to throw it into the ground.
It's pretty secure.
Yeah. So they open it. There's some bits of paper inside. I actually drew the symbols One of which, by the way, is the symbol that Doppel Cooper drew or had on the playing card that he showed Daria way back in part 2. Which I did see some people speculate in the break. I was doing a bit of reading online because what else was I going to do when there was no episode last week? About how that symbol might be Mother of Babylon. Like, it might be representing that. Or it might be representing one of the bugs that, went into the girl's mouth.
Yeah.
It could be representing one of those. But no, worth mentioning. But that's on this. So there's 2 triangles. Very, very clearly what that means. Twin Peaks. 2 peaks.
Yeah, we got that back in the old show. It was, when we got to the cave.
Now, it's worth mentioning, above the first peak, there is a red circle, which I took to be the moon. And then above the second peak, there is the symbol, we'll call it the bug symbol, for lack of a better term, right now. Above that peak, and then above that, there is a half red moon, which is why I thought the first one was a moon as well.
Yeah, that's it, because at first I was, going left to right, I was like, oh, is it a sun? Because it was red.
Yeah, it's red, yeah. But obviously, red moon's also a phrase, like, obviously, again, Twin Peaks, red, like, we're bringing the colour back into it. And it's interesting that, in drawing this symbol, he changed his pen. Like, he could have just drawn the whole thing in the black pen that he was using, but no, he made the choice to say, no, the moons are red. It has to
be in red.
Yeah. Obviously, there's a lot of information written here, some of which, of course, gets explained immediately from Bobby, but 253 yards east of Jack Rabbit's place, before...
Palace.
Sorry? Oh, Palace, yeah. That's just me reading my writing wrong. I'm missing the A there. Before leaving Jack Rabbit's palace, put some soil in your pocket. Then there's a time, which was 2:53, and then 2 dates, 1st of October and the 2nd of October, which, as the sheriff points out, is 2 days from now.
Yes.
So, basically we find out that Jack Rabbit's palace isn't a real place per se. It's a place that Major Briggs took Bobby out near his work, near his base, to basically bonding time, father-son time. And it was basically, as Bobby puts it, it's where they went to imagine things, and like there was their pretend place, and Bobby actually named it Jack Rabbit's Palace, which shows again that Major Briggs was expecting Bobby to read this.
Yeah, he's the only person who can decode this. This is a code. None of that cigar bullshit.
This is a message that only one person was ever going to be able to understand. So he knew it was going to be him that was reading this.
Yeah. Interesting, the 253s popping up again in both the time and the distance. And the distance?
Oh, you're right. Yeah,
253 yards.
Yeah, it's interesting that that's how he references this place. It's from this. Do you know this location? It's exactly that distance from there. Yeah. So no, very, very cool. Very, very cool. And I can see this kind of relating to another scene we're going to talk about in a minute. But so obviously he wants them to go there, and Truman says, "Yeah, but let's go. You can lead the way in a couple of days," as he intended. And again, all throughout this, like Bobby's smiling and he's happy to talk about this stuff. It's kind of heartwarming to see him.
Yeah.
Sort of treat his dad with this respect, because
I also really like that Truman kind of has that respect as well. He's like, no, clearly this was for you. You're taking the lead on this. We're going to follow along. We're going to be back up. We're going to support you, but this was your message.
Yeah, do you know what I like about it? It retroactively makes Bobby feel a lot more important. Because before he was the shitty boyfriend who was having an affair, and that was just kind of his thing, and that was it. But now it feels like no, it makes Briggs feel more important as well. Actually, thinking about it, like obviously he teased some big stuff back when he was on the show, but now it's like no, like he had a big thing like going forward.
That's it. Briggs was always he was a bridge to just information.
Yeah,
he often represented the government and a means to present information to Cooper, but he never was that important himself.
Yeah, but this has retroactively made him a lot more important, because there's this mystery of where was he? Did he actually die? And we'll talk about that more in a second. But actually, despite the fact that this episode has a lot more shorter scenes that's jumping around a lot more, it actually feels quite focused, because Briggs is this kind of anchor. He's this bridge, to use that word again, that links a lot of the main plots together in this episode. They go and see Briggs' body. They go and talk to Hastings. Briggs comes up there. Briggs comes up here. They go and see Briggs' wife. Like all of it kind of ties back into him. For the most part, outside of one or two other scenes, obviously Cooper and Ike the Spike sticking out there. And then there's a second bit of paper, which has a lot of coding on it, and then in that coding there's the word Cooper twice, which I want to point out, I'm pretty sure we saw a very similar bit of paper back in the original show.
We definitely did. It's when Because I remember when we were doing our reviews, this is where they mentioned the code that came from space.
Yeah. That's the way it
And
presented it.
I don't remember exactly what it said, but was it Cooper twice then? Because it definitely had
No,
Cooper's name.
no,
surely.
I remember because we saw it twice. The first time was when he first came up with this aliens thing, and we were going nuts. Oh, aliens!
Yeah.
And that was when it was the same message the giant had told him. It was like the same. We'll give you 3 clues. Give me your ring.
Yeah.
Blah blah blah. The second time though was later in season 2, and it was Cooper's name, and it was like I think it was just before the giant appeared to him, warning him or saying it was happening again. It may have been then. I'd have to go back and check, but yeah, it said Cooper. Although if I'm correct in thinking, it was more than 2.
Right.
It was like 5 or 6 Coopers.
Because obviously I think this is explained in a little bit anyway, but I was just wondering if it happened to have been the same message as before. Because again, the time-wimey stuff.
Yeah, I think what this is that it's a message. Although keep in mind though, this would have been in this rod for the last 25 years. It's not like this just happened. So
no, that's true.
So I think that's interesting if we're going to relate it. But then again, timey-wimey. Okay.
Yeah, something I also thought was very interesting as the camera focused on this second page, we got the hum come back in.
Yeah, you're right. The hum did come back in. So obviously, I think clearly, yeah, these messages are maybe like when the army's like base picks up messages. It's like intercepting stuff that some of the people from the lodge are saying.
Yes,
that
definitely
appears to be what they are. Obviously, you could misread this here because Hawk kind of misreads this, even though he's actually on the right lines. He says 2 Coopers. Now, obviously, that saying Cooper twice, I don't actually think means that there's 2 Coopers, like even though we know there is. But this is Hawk using what he knows and reading that and going 2 Coopers, and it's like.
Do you know what I love about this? It could still mean 2 Cooper. Like it could still mean just exactly that.
It could. Yeah, it could. After all,
it could, because obviously back to those original messages, like you say, they were kind of the warnings. They were. Maybe Cooper was receiving the messages himself anyway, but they were the same warnings. It was like a backup plan, perhaps.
When we got the message in season 2, where it had like 5 or 6 of them, it felt more like someone was calling out to him and he wasn't answering.
Yeah, it was more of a rather than just picking up on it. It was actually a direct communication almost. It was like, we know they'll be listening, and they were speaking to them. And I'm wondering, could this be that? Especially given where it comes up, like, is this going no? Cooper, get the 2 Coopers sort of thing.
Well, the fact that it's from 25 years ago maybe implies that it is specifically that, and it's like, it is a warning saying, no, there's 2 of them, and we've already heard them say, oh, the bad one's in the lodge from the diary, like, and this is the kind of thing, like, again, all these pieces going into a place where we can see how they're going to like connect and make sense later for the characters. It's like, what happens when Albert and Gordon meet the team from Twin Peaks and go, by the way, there's 2 Coopers? Like, you know, do they hear that from them before they find it themselves, and that blows their minds? I can
see them both trying to tell each other at the same time, as the comedy of it.
But no, very interesting. And obviously, so you got them working these lines. I'm not going to guess that next episode's when we'll see them go to this Jack's Palace place, or Jack Rabbit's Palace.
I'm also going to go based on the original show was pretty much episode per day.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be interesting to see if this was in 2 episodes' time.
It could be. I almost wonder if, like, not only, like, you know how we have this whole end of the episode is often the performance in the roadhouse. Yeah. I wonder if that also signals that's the end of a day. So if we don't have one of them at the end of the episode, it's not actually a day change.
That's possible.
And the reason why I'm saying that is because the one before episode 8, I think, was the one in the diner. And it's almost like, oh, well, the next episode's all in that night as well, because that's when, you know, Doppel Cooper gets shot, and then it's all in the past.
Yeah, because I think the only other one was, 1 and 2, which were a double, but if you watch them separately.
Yeah.
So that first one doesn't have a performance.
Yeah. So
you might be onto something.
I could be wrong, but I just, piecing the...
Although, I just want to say, if that is true, that bar is amazing to get that sort of talent every night of the week.
Oh god, I know. Also, just to before we move on, just going back to the symbols. Obviously, the idea you have to be at specific times clearly been hinted at a lot in this episode. I'm just wondering is the moon something to do with that? And what if it isn't the moon? We often talk about how these messages are coming from like past Saturn. What if this actually represents not the eclipse of the moon, but the eclipse of Saturn? Like when we see that, or maybe Jupiter or something like that. Like
when you say red, I think you think Mars.
Oh yeah, it could be Mars. Yeah, that's a good point. Red. But
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, okay, we're thinking moon because typically you think of that shape of like the half moon, you just think of the moon, but yeah, it could be a planet as well.
I think it could be, yeah.
So no, that makes sense. All right, so we go back to South Dakota, and we have a very long, mostly quiet scene. Diane's outside smoking, and Gordon and Tammy come out to join her, and he even says, "Yeah, we came out to join you, Diane," and he's kind of enthusiastic about it. And obviously the main kind of thing that's happening in this scene, and it is kind of amusing because he mentioned he quit smoking a couple of episodes ago, and he's kind of just watching her smoke, and he's clearly like gagging to join in, but the way I read this scene, which I thought was maybe the depth to it more so than just what was happening on the surface, is that Tammy doesn't seem very happy to be out there in the first place, and there's been kind of this weird, kind of tension between her and Diane, and it's almost like she's the new Diane for them, and there's this weird hostility between them because of that. They don't really respect each other. There's kind of this, like, you're my replacement, so I don't really like you, screw you, and then Tammy's kind of like trying to be respectful, but she's clearly not happy to be around her.
I think it's also interesting, it's, again, the smoking is kind of old and new. So Diane's smoking represents, that's how Gordon used to be. That's how things were in the past.
Yeah.
And then Tammy's is, no, you shouldn't be smoking. That's the new way. And then obviously it ends with him taking the cigarette and smoking. And it's like, maybe he's going, nah, always better.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. It was just the way she kind of disapproves because she says his name just before he starts. As if, you shouldn't be doing that kind of thing. It's almost like, oh, you're siding with her? Like, no.
Yeah.
What are you doing? But a very, very funny scene. It's like, it'd be very easy to just assume nothing's happening, but if you're watching Lynch's eyes follow what's going on, you can see what's happening.
Yeah. It goes on for a long time, though, considering they mostly just stood there in silence.
Yeah, but they have this moment of like reflection where they're sort of just reminiscing about smoking together in the past, and Tammy feels kind of left out. I think that's kind of the point of the scene more than anything else. Is she's this new entity. She's part of the new generation. She's a filthy millennial. Yeah,
it's there is a pre-established bond between these others that maybe it's been strained, but it's still there.
And that's not to say that Tammy is less valuable. I think it'll just be a case of we'll see how the new blood helps the situation in their own way at some point. But the idea that there's these old bonds between these old characters that they can't quite, there's something there to that. Alright, so then we have the big scene with Bill Hastings. Matthew Lillard back. Of course, we've not seen him since the start, I think, of episode 2. Maybe even the end of episode 1.
It's been a while.
But he's in interrogation. It's Tammy that goes in, actually. Tammy has her sort of moment here where she's the one who goes in and talks to him and goes through all the information here. I've got a big list of things here, of course. So much come up in this scene. Fascinating stuff. So, first up, we find out that his blog about alternate realities, another dimension, is called The Search for the Zone, which, by the way, if you look for it, it is there on the interwebs.
Of course it is.
And it looks like a shitty old website from the early 90s. It looks awful, with the sort of the flashing coloured links and all that.
Honestly, I'd have been more surprised if it didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of TV shows and do this because it's so easy just to knock it up. That is just the easy promotion,
but
essentially.
Here's the thing, though. With this being Twin Peaks and with it being Lynch, you expect there's going to be some good nuggets of information.
Something buried in there.
Yeah, even if it's in the code. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if in a couple of weeks, like some hacker, not hacker, but someone with the knowledge to look through code has went through it and like, oh, there's a hidden message in the code.
Yeah, check Reddit in a week or so.
Yeah, all the zeros and ones, they mean something. But yeah, so it's called The Search for the Zone. And so he talks a bit more about Ruth, and it really feels like they had this shared interest, and maybe that's how they became. Like, that's how the affair started. Like he was into this kind of thing, she was also into it. Ruth found information about getting to a certain place at a certain time, and they went there, and that's where they went into the zone, as they call it. Although we're obviously thinking lodge. But I mean, it may not be the lodge as we think of it either.
Well, that's it. I'm wondering if it is the lodge or if it's something else.
Well, this is the thing, because they say the Major was hiding there, and then he corrects himself and says, he said hibernating.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Now, obviously, it explains why his body's not older than it should be, because obviously we've had Cooper. I mean, Cooper's aged in the lodge, which is maybe why you think maybe Major Briggs was somewhere else. But it's that he didn't just die in a fire. That's what people thought it happened, because fire.
Yeah.
Maybe there was a corpse. Maybe there wasn't a corpse. I don't think they never specified actually. But so he was somewhere, kind of like Cooper. Although he clearly, unlike Cooper, seemed to have been about his wits the entire time and was kind of aware of what was
by choice
going on.
It seemed.
Yeah. So. And he mentions that other beings, other people were looking for the Major there. So he was hiding, even though he correctly said hibernating, he was hiding. And Briggs did want to leave. So Briggs wanted them to find information, and he mentions that Ruth was good at basically researching and recovering old records. So it sounds like they went into like some of the old Project Blue Book or some of the army stuff where whatever Major was working before, and got coordinates for Briggs, and they went back to give Briggs the coordinates. And obviously we know that Doppel Cooper wanted coordinates. That's what what's his face? What was that other guy called? Ray. That's what he wanted Ray to give him. Like that's and we know that Ray was there. In fact, he even mentions that someone else was there and demanded to know what Bill's wife was called and held him down. And at this point, I noted down, I thought, was this something else? But then I was thinking, no, this might have just been a person, because he just mentioned someone else was there and demanded to know who his wife was. And we know that his wife ended up getting killed by Doppel Cooper. So again, all these dots are kind of starting to line up a little bit. So really cool. So Tammy pulls out some photographs and says, "Can you identify the man that you called the Major?" And he does. He points to Briggs, and she says, "Circle it and sign and date it." And he does. Here's something interesting here. And this, I don't know what this means, but let's dive into this. Did you notice the date that he wrote down?
No. What was the date?
Well, remember in the other scene in Twin Peaks, they mentioned, oh, that's 2 days from now, and they're talking about the 1st of October.
Yeah, sure. So end of September.
So 28th.
Yeah.
Assuming my incredibly simple math is right. He writes down the 20th of September. He writes down 9/20. So there's multiple ways I could read this. One is that he writes down the wrong date because he's out of it, because he's went through this, and maybe he has legitimately lost a week somewhere when he went into the zone.
Could have been, although you feel like they'd have corrected him. Like they'd have gone, no, that's the wrong date. We need the accurate date.
Yeah, maybe. But here's the thing. So maybe you're saying, okay, so the stuff that's happening outside of Twin Peaks isn't happening at the exact same time. However, we did see the key get sent back to the Great Northern, and then it arrived a few days later. So none of the rest of the show to me says that there's actually I mean, admittedly, it's only about a week or so. It's not a big difference.
Yeah. My only thing is, I didn't catch this. I assume it was relatively small, this date that it was written.
And normal handwriting size.
Right, okay. I'm just wondering, because you know that with the shot, is it possible that a 0 could have just looked like it, an 8 could have looked like a 0? They're both kind of rounded shapes.
The second time I watched that, I paused it on the...
Okay, I'll have to take your word for it.
I mean, I'm tempted to go look at it again just to see, like, you know, is it still...
Yeah.
Obvious, but it definitely looked like a 0 to me, more than anything else. So I don't know if this is like a week earlier than the other stuff in Twin Peaks. I mean, maybe when everything actually connects later, we'll find out that, yeah, it was a week earlier. But
my real concern is there's no year.
That's true.
So is it a week earlier?
Right, yeah, let's see where you're going.
Yeah.
Well, no, it can't be. It can't be, because we saw the FBI look at the box in New York, and then that led to like Cooper becoming
I'm just thinking, could it be a year later?
I think for this to work though, everything but the FBI scenes. No, but then that relates to Doppel Cooper, and Doppel Cooper had the same effects.
That's it. Everything's still kind of
because Doppel Cooper
closely related, isn't it?
Doppel Cooper had the effects of Cooper coming out of the lodge at the same time. Like all these things have lined up. Like there's too many connections between all the different plots to.
The only thing that feels like it could be a separate part is Twin Peaks itself.
Yeah, but even then we have the key.
Even then, it's the key. Yeah.
Yeah. So Which is why I'm thinking maybe he's written down. I mean, maybe Tammy didn't notice. Like, she's not really look.
I think I just went back and checked in this now. He does say 9:20 out loud.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Yeah.
He actually says it. Right.
Yeah. Quietly, but it's got to be a week off, hasn't it?
But it doesn't really.
How and why?
My only, I mean, at least from a storytelling perspective, it means maybe the FBI characters will do something of importance before they go to Twin Peaks, and it'll explain why they can just be there at the right time. Kind of idea, but
I see what you're saying.
But there's a couple of things that don't quite line up, perhaps, or maybe they do. Maybe if I went back and actually charted it all, maybe it could possibly, like maybe they were in sync before, and it's only been the last while they've been in South Dakota that things have been a week behind and everything else has moved ahead.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's hard to say. But continue with the scene. So they mentioned. So it's worth mentioning. Yeah. So someone else was there, which we were assuming was maybe Ray, given the other scenes we've had with him talking about getting the information. They went back to see Briggs after that. They got the coordinates and they went back. They went back to give him the coordinates. But so here's what happened when this went down. So it gave him the numbers. He then floated in the air, and I'm assuming he's talking about Briggs. It was kind of.
I assumed Briggs as well.
Yeah, it was a little bit tough to make out from the sense that he mentioned like the others before he mentioned Briggs again. So it was hard to tell if he was talking about another person, but I think he was talking about Briggs. Gave Briggs the numbers. He floated up in the air and then said Cooper, which of course on the paper.
And this is why I'm wondering: did he give himself that message? Like, did he
through time?
Yeah. So 25 years ago, when he wrote that down, he presumably had the vision, dream, whatever it was, however he saw it, and interpreted this message, or just got it through the machines in the government where they picked up the signal. Well, I'm not entirely sure, because obviously all that stuff kind of connects together with the Bobby stuff.
Yeah, what fascinates me about this is, okay, we just last episode seen someone floating, we've seen the giant floating, and it's interesting to me that like it was Briggs becoming like someone like the giant. Was he maybe gearing up to replace the giant or something like that? I don't know. And if he was taking him out the game like a big blow to the good side of the fight, as it were.
That's it, isn't it? It's
I don't know, but for what's fascinating about this to me is like there's no way. I mean, arguably Ruth could have got information, I suppose, but there's no at least obvious way that Bill should know who Cooper is. So him actually saying Cooper kind of tells at least Albert and Gordon and Tammy.
There's some legitimacy to what he's saying.
Yeah, there's some, and obviously we know that he's probably telling the truth given everything we've seen in the show.
Yeah.
I like how terrified he is in this scene, by the way. I think he really sells the fear that there's forces out with his control that are affecting things, and he's terrified. And then he mentions when he's pushed to talk about, he says, it was beautiful, and then Ruth was dead. That's how he phrases it when he's talking about how this all went down. This was beautiful, and it sounds like just after this happened, he talks there was many people there, and that immediately made me think woodsman.
Yeah, that's what I did too.
Did the woodsman show up? Were the woodsmen the ones that killed Ruth, and left him there holding her, and as it says?
If there was many, why was there only one in the jail cell?
Well, because we talked about how maybe... Well, because when this happened, they were still with Briggs, from the sounds of it. They were still in this other place, whether this was the lodge exactly, or if it was like an offshoot to the lodge or whatever. Obviously, I think the reason why that woodsman was in the jail cell with him was because they just went through all this. Maybe this woodsman was monitoring him in the jail cell for more information, because it was right after the scene with the wife that we seen the woodsman in the jail cell.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if the woodsman was paying attention to that conversation because they want to know what it's leading to. Because again, the next time we see a woodsman in present day was at the morgue, walking past Briggs's body whilst they were trying to figure out information out.
And they did ask, what's his wife's name?
Assuming that was them, although I still think that may have been Ray or...
Yeah, it might well have been. I'm just putting it together as maybe they're all working on the same side.
Possibly. But So I think it's interesting that every time we've seen the Woodsman in present day, outside of Doppel Cooper himself, and obviously they came to get the Bob Egg out of his, or Bob Orb out of his stomach. It's always been to do in some way with Briggs, and they're following the path of the information where that could be going.
That's it. They never interact. They're not following the body or anything. They're following the conversations around it.
Yeah, so they're very keen on knowing if anyone's going to actually come looking for Briggs or figure out what Briggs was doing.
Yeah.
So it very much feels like, yeah, if they're a force for the dark side of the world, that they are concerned with Briggs, because Briggs, if he wasn't going to be a replacement for the Giant, he was at least, he was a force for good. He was definitely someone who was fighting on the right side. So they seem to be wanting to. They've already stopped him, I suppose, but they're wanting to stop it reigniting, or they're wanting to stop someone else picking up in his place.
That's the question. Are they wanting to learn what other people know, or like for what purpose? Is it so that they can, just follow how far along they are and know if they have to intervene?
Yeah.
Or is it because they might learn something they don't know yet?
I don't think it's because I would lean towards the former. I think it's because they want to. Because if people learn too much, if other people figure things out, they might try to accomplish whatever Briggs was trying to accomplish, and they want to stop that. I feel like that's more likely. I don't think it's that they don't.
That was my first thought as well, but just on the off chance that they'd learn something, they're hunting for information for their own purpose.
Yeah. So yeah. Bill's a complete mess. He's blubbering through the whole thing. He's distraught. All of this, of course, was fascinating stuff. Everything about this, we're thinking Woodsman. We're hearing about Briggs and where he's been all this time. It's all great stuff. Of course, he then blubbers about how he wanted to go to the Bahamas or whatever it was with Ruth. And he kept saying he wanted to go scuba diving, which was really weird because every time he said scuba, I kept thinking of Scooby-Doo because he was Shaggy. And it sounded very similar to that. It was weird. But after all of his blubbering, we get a great Albert line. It just cuts back to Albert in the behind the mirror, and he's like, "Fruitcake, anyone?"
Love Albert.
Albert's great. I do love Albert. He's fantastic. And it is interesting that, again, it feels like we're slowly getting back to what the show used to be in a lot of ways. I don't think it'll ever be the exact same, but this one, as we said, had a lot more of these comedy beats, these funnier moments. More of the music, including the lighter, hearty music. It's after this scene that we cut back to the trees of Twin Peaks, and Laura's theme plays again, much like it did a few episodes ago. Very ominous, of course, and then it cuts to the establishing shot of the Great Northern that we're so used to. And again, so we've seen the photo earlier on, it's like us linking those things together. And again, we're back with Ben and Beverly, who are again listening for this noise, this hum, which isn't the exact same hum, of course, that we keep hearing with the outlets and with lodge-related activity. As they even mention, this is more of a mesmerising hum. It sounds more pleasant, I guess, is a word you use. In fact, Ben at one point calls it otherworldly, and how right he probably is.
He probably is, yeah.
Obviously, the other main thing here is that Beverly kind of accidentally makes a move. I think it's an intentional accident, though.
I agree, based on what we saw last time.
Yeah. She makes a move, and Ben apparently is a better person than he used to be. He turns away and says, "We can't do this, Beverly." And he says, "I don't know why it can't, but it can." I thought that was a very interesting phrasing, the way he said it. But yeah, he turns it down. He's an improved person. But clearly something is brewing in Twin Peaks.
It's all about to shatter.
Here's a question. Andy's obsessed about picking his chair. Is he giving up the case about looking for the guy who knocked down the kid? Do your job, Andy.
To be fair, if I was going to get a comfy new chair, I'd probably be concerned about that too.
Case in point. So after that, we actually cut to the roadhouse, insinuating we're ending, and we're so near the end of the episode that we actually it could have been the end, and it almost is, because we actually stay in the roadhouse till the end at this point.
Yeah.
But there's another DJ on stage, and it cuts to some characters who we've not seen before. I caught their names just from the credits. That's the reason why I know their names. But Ella is the sort of the blonde, the main one that we see, who I originally wrote down as Rash Girl.
Fair enough.
and then the other girl is Chloe. They both appear to be junkies. In large capacity. They have that kind of look about them. And of course they even talk about going to work high and everything else. So obviously that's the type of characters. I want to point out how disgusting the sound effect of Ella scratching her rash was during this scene.
Yeah.
I was physically uncomfortable numerous times.
Do you know what? I was fully expecting it to just like peel off as she was scratching. I was fully expecting just a chunk of flesh to peel away with her hand and it to be horrifically disgusting. So, yeah, not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
So they basically talk about how Ella's lost her job. She got fired because she showed up high to work. It's like, it doesn't matter, I was still doing the job. And then she's like, oh, you got a new job then? What are you doing now? She's like, oh, I'm still serving burgers just across the street. I'm like, okay. The two bits of dialogue I wrote down though, there's two really cryptic lines in this conversation. One was early on, and another one was towards the end. One of them said to the other, "That zebra's out again."
Yeah. And
then towards the end of the scene, one of them said, "Have you seen that penguin?" Penguin, rather.
Yeah, that was a weird pronunciation of penguin.
It's one of these things where if I just say the word penguin, I'll just say penguin. But when I read it, because it's spelt that way, I'll try and say it the way it's written.
Fair enough. I just slight tangent here. I fully recommend everyone YouTubing Benedict Cumberbatch saying the word penguin. It's fantastic.
Okay, that was a weird...
He butchers it completely.
That was a weird recommendation, but fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, my first thought with the first sentence, "the zebra's out again," I just assumed they were talking about drugs, and it was just a code word.
Yeah. But
then the second one didn't feel that way at all. The penguin one felt, I don't know,
strange.
Strange, yeah. Like I didn't know what they were talking about. Now, obviously, this isn't the first junkie character we've had. We had the junkie mother, who had the kid across the street from where Cooper came out, and I don't know. Oh, well, that reminds me of something actually. But yeah, I can just go into that because I don't have anything else to say about this scene. I have no idea what's going on with these two. I have no idea what the purpose is.
I thought it was interesting that penguins and zebras. I think for both of them, I think black and white.
Yeah, that's true. Both black and white. And this is maybe a bit of a stretch, but I did think at one point during this scene, well, rashes are red.
Yeah. I also want to say the DJ was actually playing a lot of reverse samples, so they were just the sounds playing backwards, which I thought was interesting given all the way the lodge stuff was recorded. Don't know if that was intentional or not, or just...
The zebra's out again.
It makes me wonder, who is the zebra? Someone?
I don't know.
Or is it something?
I'm assuming these characters, if this does mean anything else, I'm assuming these characters don't actually know what it means.
I would assume so.
Like, this is like something weird they've picked up because when they've been high, they've gotten like a weird message from someone.
Well, yeah, but given that we see Jerry kind of in a similar state of mind.
That is true, yeah, right. If we're going with the idea that Jerry's kind of feeling some of the things that Cooper's feeling.
Who are these connected to?
Yeah.
And to go back into the drug stuff, in the original show, you had to take the drug to suppress one-armed man coming through. When Bob was near.
That's right, yeah. There was
a theme of drugs being this connection or a blocker in that case, but it's a similar sort of thing.
Yeah, right, Gerard.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That is interesting. Like, I don't know if these people are necessarily blocking someone coming through, but the idea that it's opening up some kind of messaging from somewhere, is interesting. I don't know. I mean, maybe the idea that the drug business is so popular in Twin Peaks, despite it being a small town, maybe has something to do with the fact that so many people feel the effects of the town, like they feel something's coming.
Yeah, and also obviously, hard drugs, they're typically not a good thing, and we know that the lodge thrives on acts of evil and darkness, and maybe just the idea of this drug epidemic in general kind of has given that sense to the whole town.
Yeah, the fact that there's a bigger population and a lot of them are maybe going through this is fueling the lodge
Yeah.
It's feeling Bob and feeling others like him.
Exactly.
All that Garmonbozia.
Exactly. All that stuff.
Yeah. Do you remember what Garmonbozia is?
I do. It was a few episodes ago, wasn't it?
Oh, it was fair what with me when it first came up.
Oh yeah, but it was been in this show as well, right?
Yeah, I think it's been mentioned.
I'm sure it's been mentioned
once or twice.
Unless we've just mentioned it on here, and
probably.
that's why it's in my mind.
Pain and Suffering, for anyone who's forgotten, Pain and Suffering is Garmonbozia, which many people seem to think is the stuff that Doppel Cooper was spewing up in the car. That's why it looks so funky.
That's why I've seen the word recently. There's people in the comments mentioning it.
Yeah.
I know it's in relation to specifically this part of the show.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to bring up something that I'd seen that was very interesting. Could be nothing, but online there were some photos going around comparing a young Frank Silva, who played Bob, to the young man who was in the 50s segment of the last episode, and they look very similar. Now, it could be a coincidence, may not actually meant to be him, but I don't know if the idea, if it is, say, if this is young Bob, like this is the person that Bob kind of took and became him kind of thing, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, if the bug was Bob that went to the girl, like, does the bug then transfer to him because he's weaker or stronger or whatever? And
could be.
That's why Bob even has, like, an image. Like, that's why he has, like, what he looks like, is because it's based on this person, because that's who he became, I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Just an idea.
Unless it's the idea that, Bob has to be born, and that boy would be the father, so Bob would look like the father.
Oh, that's it. Up until now, there's been no evidence that Bob ever actually had a physical presence.
There hasn't.
So
it's true.
So who's to say if that's the case? But no, I just thought it was interesting. It was an interesting extra bit of stuff from the interwebs, who obviously have things. So yeah, I have no idea what these two junkies means all that much. But yeah, certainly if we're to compare it to Jerry and his seemingly getting kind of at least thematic connections to what other characters are going through, like what other characters are these two connecting to, is a very interesting question. I can't think of any off the top of my head, especially since I am assuming it would be people who are affected in some way by the lodge.
I would assume so, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not sure who it would be, but question. That's a good answer if you've got an idea in the comments. If you can think of anyone that those two characters might be. Basically, the way I'm kind of comparing it in my head, the way we're describing Jerry, like getting some of like Cooper's like feelings, is kind of like this weird empath connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if that's maybe what's happening with these two as well. That's a good idea. But there you go. That has been episode 9, part 9 of Twin Peaks: The Return. We didn't quite match the length of the last one, but it was still pretty long.
We're up there still.
Yeah, we're hitting an hour 20, so we will wrap this up pretty quickly. So thank you very much for watching. Hopefully we had some thoughts and theories, or at least recap some vital details that you might have missed to make things interesting. So obviously we'll be back next week. Let us know what you thought of the episode in the comments below. Thoughts and theories, all that stuff. Get us on Twitter at mild_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the channel and everything we do here, head over to patreon.com/mildfuzztv. You can support us over there and see some of the bonuses you can get. But that is us. So thank you very much once again. I am starving. I am going to go have some pizza because we have been recording for a while. So we'll see you next time. Have you got any vanilla?